India's efforts to meddle in the last Conservative leadership race. Now, your predecessor had asked Pierre Poilievre to get a security clearance so he could obtain briefings about threats. You, of course, have obtained a security clearance. You've been briefed. And that brings me to my question. Just before the election,
Mark Carney would like you to think he's the ultimate guardian of Canadian democracy, but in reality, he's just another liberal mouthpiece lobbing baseless accusations at Pierre Poilievre. It's a desperate attempt to protect the crumbling liberal agenda. Carney's latest smear claims that Poilievre's refusal to obtain a security clearance is somehow irresponsible. Yet, he conveniently overlooks his own financial ties to China. This move is textbook liberal. When their own shady dealings are under scrutiny, they deflect, hoping you won't notice their hypocrisy. The so-called scandal about alleged Indian involvement in Poilievre's leadership bid is nothing more than a recycled distraction, a weak attempt to paint him as compromise. Meanwhile, Carney's own government has a well-documented history of turning a blind eye to foreign interference. But here's the kicker. Poilievre isn't refusing the security clearance because he's hiding something. He's refusing it because he refuses to be silenced, and that's exactly what Carney and the Liberals are afraid of. Welcome back to True North Politics. The recent controversy surrounding Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre's decision not to obtain a security clearance has once again been dragged into the spotlight, with both the Prime Minister and Mark Carney launching direct attacks on Poilievre. Carney has been quick to label Poilievre's decision as irresponsible, following reports from the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, CSIS, that allegedly pointed to Indian involvement in Poilievre's leadership bid. Oh, the horror. Imagine a Canadian leader getting support from Canadians of Indian descent. But here's the real question. Why does Carney think he's the authority on integrity when he's the one cozying up to China? The liberal strategy of smearing Poilievre with accusations of foreign interference is as predictable as Carney popping up for a selfie at every climate summit. The Globe and Mail's report about alleged Indian support for Poilievre's leadership campaign is merely a rehash of old claims, none of which have been substantiated with concrete evidence. Even the CSIS report itself makes it clear. Poilievre and his team were unaware of any such efforts. But when it comes to real concerns about foreign interference, suddenly the Liberals develop an impressive case of selective amnesia.
India's efforts to meddle in the last Conservative leadership race. Now, your predecessor had asked Pierre Poilievre to get a security clearance so he could obtain briefings about threats. You, of course, have obtained a security clearance. You've been briefed. And that brings me to my question. Just before the election, you removed a 3-term Liberal candidate from the riding of Nepean, Chandra Arya. That's a very serious decision and a very drastic decision. You've been briefed. Can you tell us why this was necessary, and did it have something to do with his close relations with the Modi government in India?
Thank you for your question, Steve. Let me say a few things. The first is that I find it beyond baffling. I find it downright irresponsible that the leader of the opposition, day after day, month after month, year after year, refuses to obtain his security clearance. As a normal course in peacetime when times were tranquil, that's unacceptable then. But at this point in our history, when we face the greatest threats that we faced in generations, in most of our lifetimes, he has to answer for that. And he particularly has to answer for that given the reporting that I understand you did, you and your colleagues did today, and the lack of integrity in the Conservative leadership race. Now, I will observe that in the Liberal leadership race, every effort was made to protect the integrity of that race, including, I'll be frank, quite an onerous technical system for voting to verify identity, location, so that that was held up. And some people couldn't vote because of that. We decided to take that risk because we wanted the highest integrity for that race. As part of that process, of course, there were reviews of candidates and suitability, myself included, appropriately. Certain information came to light. I'm not privy to the exact information. It's a separate process. Certain candidates were disqualified from that race. That information was relevant to the decision of what is a separate body within the Liberal Party. It was called a Green Light Committee that made the decision to disqualify Mr. Arya. I can assure you that information that we have, I'm saying broadly as a party, not me personally, because I don't have the specific information, is shared with the relevant authorities. We take this incredibly serious. Steve, I want to make one other point, if I may, and I'll hand back. One of the acts that I took as Prime Minister in the 9 days between being sworn in and asking the Governor General to dissolve Parliament and call this election was to strengthen the critical election incident protocol. It's a protocol that had been put in place a few years ago, but various measures to strengthen that, and also to encourage greater transparency from that group during the election campaign, so that if issues arise during the election campaign, in their independent judgment, that they will share with all Canadians and ensure that Canadians have the confidence, which I have at this point, the full confidence in the integrity of the federal election process. I'll hand back.
Poilievre has rightly called out the dangers of taking a security clearance under a Liberal government that thrives on silencing the opposition. By agreeing to the terms of a security clearance, Poilievre would be bound by secrecy, unable to openly criticize government decisions or challenge intelligence briefings that are often manipulated for political gain. The Liberals aren't concerned with national security. They're more interested in controlling the narrative. It's like inviting someone to a poker game, but forcing them to play with their cards facing the ceiling. How can you make a fair move when you can't see the hand you're dealt?
We know that Donald Trump would like to have Mark Carney, a weak Liberal, in charge of our country. Because he knows, first of all, that Mark Carney will sell out our country, as he's done so often. He's a guy with, up until recently, had 3 passports, moved his headquarters, corporate headquarters, out of Canada to New York, only days after Trump threatened tariffs, leaving behind Canadian workers. And it was revealed today that Mark Carney actually went to China and took a $250 million loan from a state-backed Chinese bank. And he still has investments in the same company for which that loan was made, which means that the Prime Minister of our country is now beholden to a hostile foreign regime that has executed 4 Canadian citizens, taken 2 others hostage, done incursions into our Arctic waters, and has interfered in our democracy. It is time for Mark Carney to stop covering up his foreign conflicts of interest. Come clean about what you own and stop selling out our country to foreign interests.
Meanwhile, the hypocrisy of Mark Carney is as obvious as a Toronto traffic jam. While he lectures Poilievre about security responsibilities, Carney himself is deeply tied to China financially through his role at Brookfield Asset Management. Under his leadership, Brookfield secured a massive $250 million loan from the Bank of China just weeks after Carney secretly met with high-ranking Chinese financial officials. But don't worry, he put his assets in a blind trust because, as we all know from past liberal ethics scandals, that's a completely foolproof solution, right?
Hey, I'm Jillian Piper with Global News. I understand that your assets have been put into a blind trust. I wanted to ask you, what is the value of the assets and where did they come from? How can Canadians know that there's no conflict of interest if they don't know where the assets come from?
That's an odd question, or odd way of framing it. The assets are in a blind trust. So, and can I point out that for those who don't follow this, I have 6 months to put, or 120 days to put the assets in a blind trust. I already have put the assets in a blind trust. And once assets are in a blind trust, you don't know that, by definition, you don't know the assets because the trustees take over the responsibility. I would like to reassure you that the assets that I have were earned through employment. Employment income, employment as a public servant, and employment in the private sector. And I would note as well that employment in the private sector is something that the Leader of the Opposition has never experienced. And I would point as well that complying or meeting standards expected of a leader of a party, let alone a prime minister, is something that the Leader of Opposition has not respected either, and I'm speaking directly with respect to his refusal, still at a time of great crisis, to get his security clearance, something I managed to do in 2 weeks.
Carney's ties to China are especially troubling, given Beijing's well-documented history of economic and political subversion in democratic nations. The fact that he engaged in private talks with Chinese officials while serving as Justin Trudeau's economic advisor raises serious questions. What exactly was on the agenda? How to lose an election and still land a government job? At a time when China is actively undermining Canadian sovereignty, can we really trust a leader whose financial and political interests are so tightly linked to the Chinese Communist Party? And let's not overlook the glaring double standard at play. The Liberals have repeatedly been implicated in scandals involving foreign interference, yet they continue to deflect any real scrutiny. Whether it's the documented reports of Chinese interference in the 2019 and 2021 federal elections or the recent revelations about the Trudeau government's inaction on foreign meddling, the Liberals have consistently refused to take responsibility. But when it comes to Poilievre, they're eager to manufacture controversy over unproven claims. It's like watching a bad magician distract you with one hand while the other is knee-deep in scandal. The Liberals' attack on Poilievre also completely misses the real reason he refuses a security clearance. Unlike Carney and his circle, Poilievre understands that accepting such clearance would muzzle him and prevent him from holding the government accountable. As he's rightly stated, the Liberals want to bring him into a dark room, feed him partial intelligence, and then bar him from speaking out. This isn't about national security. It's about silencing dissent. And let's be honest, a Liberal lecturing someone on transparency is like a cat advising a mouse on fair play. At a time when Canada faces serious economic challenges, increasing foreign threats, and a federal government that refuses to take responsibility, Poilievre's leadership stands in stark contrast to the Liberal status quo. He has consistently prioritized Canadian interests over political games, which is precisely why the Liberals and their media allies are so desperate to discredit him. The real danger to Canada isn't Poilievre's refusal to obtain a security clearance. It's the Liberals' refusal to be honest with Canadians. The contrast between Carney and Poilievre couldn't be clearer. Carney represents the elite globalist class, prioritizing financial interests over national security, while Poilievre stands as a leader who refuses to be controlled by liberal gatekeeping. Carney's financial ties to China should be the real story here. Yet the media continues to give him a free pass while focusing on baseless claims against Poilievre. Canadians deserve a leader who will fight for their interests, not one who is beholden to foreign powers and corporate elites. The Liberals have failed this country for nearly a decade, and their attempts to undermine Poilievre are nothing more than a desperate bid to cling to power. It's time for a leader who will stand up to foreign threats, protect Canada's sovereignty, and put Canadians first. That leader is Pierre Poilievre. And if Carney is so desperate for a job, maybe he should apply to be China's next finance minister. Sounds like he's already qualified. Well, that's all for now. Do you think the Liberals are genuinely concerned about national security? Or are they just using baseless accusations to silence their strongest opponent? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you haven't already, please subscribe and leave a like on this video. Your support helps us keep this conversation going. Thanks again for your support, and I'll see you in the next one.